Good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa O'Connell, the Artistic Director of Pathadog Theatre Creation, and we are the producers and the presenters of Femme Folk Fest, and welcome. Thank you for joining us this early evening for this wonderful conversation. It is absolutely my pleasure to introduce to you Vanessa Spence. Vanessa is a member of our Women's Room 21, but more importantly, she's the Artistic Director of Virtu Arts, who will be, and also super importantly, is our very first festival company in residence. It is absolutely my honor and pleasure to pass the space over tonight to Vanessa for this wonderful conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So yes, just like Lisa said, my name is Vanessa Spence, and I am the Artistic Director of Virtu Arts. I just want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank Lisa. I want to thank Femme Folks Fest for giving us this opportunity. So I know that we're logging in from many different parts of the city, Ontario, hopefully Canada, and hopefully the world. But I want to acknowledge the land that I am logging in from. So currently I reside on the land that is located on the Haldimand Tract, land promised to 6 nations, which includes 6 miles on either side of the Grand River. Myself, Virtu Arts, and the Femme Folks Fest are on the traditional territory of the Arawandran, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. So I'm just like very excited to welcome everyone to the first Virtu Arts Blackout Forum. So this forum was really created to just be a conversation with artists from the Black, Caribbean, and African diasporas to speak candidly about the good, the bad, and the ugly of being an artist in regions where we are just not well represented. So in celebration of the festival, we will be focusing on what it means to be an artist who identifies as a Black woman in a space that lacks the representation that we need in order to thrive. So the intention for this forum is really to gather, so we're doing exactly what we're doing right now, and give voice to the experiences of Black artists. And I'm hoping that by sharing these experiences in a safer space that we are able to control, that we are encouraging folks to learn from the past, be educated in the present, and with that presence, we incite change and evolution for the future. Once again, I just want to thank you all for being here and taking the time out of your Saturday evening to join this conversation and to be here in the capacity to listen, you know, and possibly inquire with the intention of pushing the conversation forward and thinking of ways that you can really help and make a change to make this conversation and many conversations surrounding artists and Black artists in your community to be a little bit less urgent for future generations. So we've got a great evening set up for you all, starting with a spoken word piece from the lovely Shama Saleh, who is a KW region storyteller and also one of our panelists for the evening. After that, it will lead into our facilitated discussion with Shama, Natasha, Glo Dean, and Sarah, who I will introduce a little bit later. And after that, we will have an open forum. So you will be able to ask any questions to the panelists directly, and once again, in hopes of moving the conversation forward. And then lastly, we'll end with another beautiful performance by Shama. So if you have any questions that pop into your head during the evening, feel free to use the chat box below, and we will refer to those questions a little bit later on in the evening. Now, before we move ahead, I just want to remind everyone that, in the words of my beautiful friend, Sincerely Shy, this right here is holy. This is a holy space. This is a safe space. This is a sacred space, a space where we can connect, where we can share and learn, hopefully feel all of the emotions, you know, without judgment or shame. And so to welcome that feeling and to welcome that energy, I'd like for all of us to have a deep breath in and a calming breath out collectively. So if you can just follow after me, I'll count up to 3. We'll take a deep breath in, hold, and then we'll take a nice calming breath out. Follow after me. 1, 2, 3, deep breath in, hold, and out. That always makes me feel better. Okay, so without further ado, I would really love to welcome Shama to the stage to perform her first poem entitled "The Best Way I Know How."
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for that. That was beautiful. So as she said, I will be performing a spoken word piece for tonight. I am going to warn everybody, it's sort of a heavier piece. If you feel sort of any emotions or you feel some sort of connection or resonate with my work, definitely snaps, say things, definitely things in the chat would be great. But without further ado, I will start. And they asked me, how do parades roll off of a tongue that spent time and time again waging war against their kins? I mean, their Caucasian neighbors. I mean, their equal counterparts with unequal privileges. I mean, we are kins more or less if we all come from one God, one ancestor or one being. I replied with silence. How could I reply with assertiveness in my voice when my name speaks obstacles? I was never one to be proud of my maps, ones they called scars, because love didn't belong here. At least, not the kind people dream of too often. See, my being speaks resilience. Because my mama never gave up once. She is a bungee cord at best, and her hands are her witness. I asked her, Mama, do you ever get tired? Do you slouch because your posture needs a break when the world hasn't given you enough? Have you lost your rhythm? One that was used weeks apart when the only thing that separated you and your lover was what seemed to be a never-ending ocean. Did it hurt when she almost never came back? Did it hurt when he never came back? You have seemed to have misplaced what you once called home. I wonder what tribulation led you to the sadder type of silence. The silence that makes you want to scream, but nobody stays long enough to hear. The silence that makes you tally up all the memories that forgot to speak themselves into existence. The silence where words always seem to be at the tip of your tongue, but time decides for it to be unsaid. I wonder what trauma brought you to your knees. I learned to memorize the patterns on your face, and I could tell you felt defeat before. But I tried to save you once, Mama. I tried to find love in all the spaces that hurt you the most. I tried to comfort all that you are not, but please, Mama, don't let silence become your survival tip 101. They don't deserve to continue to use your silence as a way to confirm their reckless ways with the system. I'm not sure what's worse at this point. Being Black, or being Muslim, or being a woman or refugee, God forbid that you're all for, but ain't that magic? The way we wear our intersectionalities, our contradictories like bulletproof vests, making every space we walk into an uncomfortable sanctuary. The way our history and our people have been robbed from us one by one, boat by boat, chains after chains. Ain't that unfortunate? That if our ancestors weren't slaves, we have family today as refugees, yet we're still here, continuing the fight of our ancestors the best way we know how, being revolutionaries the best way we know how, being an unapologetically Black Muslim woman the best way I know how. I refuse to ground myself on soil that has hurt more of my people than it has carried, and if we had it our way, we'd be back in our motherlands where we'd be celebrated as if we've never left, but instead, we bring home to us through sponsorship applications, green cards, and visas. And yet we continue to deal with rejection the best way we know how, substituting struggle for existence the best way we know how. So we pray the best way we know how. يليني يحفظه ونمرنه يحفظه يليني يحفظه ونمرنه يحفظه يليني يحفظه ونمرنه يحفظه. May God protect us and our people. May God protect us and our people. May God protect us and our people. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Shama. That was lovely. It was very important for me to have a performance aspect of this night, to act as a bit of a, to be a juxtaposition to the conversation that we're going to have, because we show the best parts of ourselves up on the stage, at work. But the conversation that we're going to have today, it's everything that we have to deal with in the background. And so that was very beautiful. And it's a great segue into introducing you, Shama. So first person I would like to introduce for our panel is, of course, the lovely Shama Saleh that you just heard from. So Shama is a storyteller who finds creative ways to meet all parts of who she is. At a young age, she turned to writing as a therapeutic means of private expression. She finds importance in always writing from a place of personal transparency, while also combining advocacy and creativity for those who choose to listen and resonate with her work. As a Black Muslim woman, she hopes to continue to contribute to the storytelling ways of her people and give voice to the voiceless through love and compassion. As the great poet Toni Morrison said, "Make up a story. For our sake and yours, forget your name on the street. Tell us what the world has been to you in the dark places and in the light. Don't tell us what you believe, what to fear. Show us belief's wide skirt and the stitch that unravels fear's call." Thank you for being with us, Shama. Next, I would like to introduce Glo Dean Brown. Glodeane is an arts management professional and an arts and culture blogger. She has lived in Waterloo region for a long time, maybe too long. She is the founder and editor of Culture Fancier, the arts and culture blog she started in 2016 with the aim to educate, entertain, and inspire people. Brown is a sometimes curator and is currently working as a general manager at Kafka, Contemporary Art Forum Kitchener and Area, helping to plan and manage the 2021 biennial exhibition. She is also a director at Arts Awards Waterloo Region. Next.
Thank you for having me.
Next, I would like to introduce Sarah Nairne. Sarah is a young Black professional self-taught actor, singer, creator, and musician based out of Kitchener, Ontario. Sarah is a graduate of the University of Waterloo with a Bachelor of Arts focusing on political science and speech communications with a minor in studio art and more, etc. She's had the privilege to share her performance work on multiple stages across Canada, starting off at Drayton Entertainment to Tweed & Co., and namely in the Canadian premiere of The Color Purple and Neptune Theatre, as well as the Citadel Theatre and Royal MTC co-production. She was part of the Black Theatre Workshop's Artist Mentorship Program, which had given her the opportunity to elevate her skills and enrich her understanding of Black Canadian theatre. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you. And last, but definitely not least, we have Natasha Adiyana Morris. Natasha is a playwright of Jamaican Canadian descent, recognized for founding Peace of Mind Arts, a platform for presenting works in progress by Black play creators. She has overseen the showcasing of over 200 artists since 2013. Natasha is the playwright and director of The Negroes Are Congregating, which received a Dora nomination for Outstanding New Play in 2020 and won the SummerWorks New Performance Text Award in 2018. The satirical drama touches on internalized racism and has been produced internationally, including Canada, the United States, and even in Europe. She is honored to join the 2021 Soul Pepper Academy and be Current's Playwright Incubator. You can find out more about Natasha and Peace of Mind at peaceofmindarts.com. Thank you, ladies, for being here. Thank you so much. So kind of starting off with those lovely bios, it seems that you ladies have really accomplished some amazing things, and you guys are doing some amazing things. And it looks like your work kind of, it speaks to not only you growing as an artist and as a person who loves the arts, but it helps uplift other Black artists and really other artists in general. So I want to know, you know, kind of like what Shama said, you know, we're tired, you know, we're tired, but we still do the work. So I want to know where you find your spark. Where do you find your spark, and what resources do you pull from to continue the work that you're doing, not only for you as an artist, but for your community?
I guess I could start. So I'm a co-founder and a programs coordinator for an organization called Project Up, or Project Unleashing Potential. And so we support a lot of Black Muslim girls in various domains like health, arts, and mentorship leadership. And, you know, I always say that in terms of, you know, my art, and specifically with spoken word poetry, I started, you know, in my room and getting, you know, I remember watching, like, it was funny because, like, I would watch YouTube videos, and then I would go to conferences and events and go out to Toronto to actual poetry events. And that was where I sort of started. And then when I actually started performing, and other girls watched me perform, that's sort of how they got into poetry, or singing, or other sort of creative things. And ultimately, like, my spark, my inspiration, my motivation comes from the youth that we work with, having, like, being in spaces with them, being in, you know, meetings where, you know, they tell us about their week or the things that they're doing. It's amazing. And we had an event called Dare to Be Creative. This was pre-COVID, Dare to Be Creative, where we actually held, I guess, like an event for girls to express themselves in various ways. Some girls did poetry, some girls acted, there was comedian skits, as well as poetry performed. And it was amazing. It was probably one of the best turnouts, and also like one of the best events that we had. So I guess, like, for me, at least in the work that I do, definitely, like, the youth's energy around this space is really what pushes me.
Mm-hmm. And kind of going a little bit deeper into that, what is it about the youth? Do you think it's about the fact that the future looks a bit brighter in their eyes? Do you think it's the fact that, you know, maybe the path is a little bit clearer for them? Like, what is it specifically, do you think, about the youth that really gets you going?
Yeah, I think definitely, like, their innocence and their, I think the younger generation just has this need to push narratives and push boundaries in ways that I haven't seen in my generation as much. Maybe social media has a lot to do with it, given that, like, we see things and we have access to more information, but definitely their innocence and their ability and want to explore various art forms in ways, again, that I haven't really seen my generation do. I think a lot of us, I guess older folks, I don't even know if I want to use that term, but, like, people of, like, the older generations, essentially, you know, if they start off with singing, that's what they're going to do. Or if they start off with, I don't know, like, maybe painting or something along those, like, that's sort of what they stick to. But I see so many young people getting into singing and painting and doing all these different types of things, and recognizing that, like, they're not boxing themselves in, which is amazing to see, because, again, it inspires me to essentially do the same.
Oh, understood. Yeah. They're so eager and, like, ready to just pick up new things, you know, because it's very accessible. You know, on YouTube, you can really learn how to do anything and be an expert at it. So yeah, I totally get it. Glodeane, what is your spark?
Yeah, well, for me, I just love meeting people and connecting with people. I've done, I don't know how many, like, tons of interviews over the past 5 years. And even prior to launching the blog, I would always go to artist events and talk to artists. So anyone who's just kind of, like, has an idea and then runs with it and creates something out of nothing, that's really inspiring to me. And also with the blog, I've been able to give different people a platform to kind of tell their story. And then I'm also sharing that story with other people. So that's inspiring for me. Like, when I go and do an interview with someone and we're talking. I'm also like learning things for myself that inspires me. And then when I publish it, other people are reading it and I get feedback and they'll say, you know, that post you made with this artist, they said something that really resonated with me, or it's something that I really needed to hear at that time. So yeah, I'm learning from people that I'm going out to speak to. And then when I share that, it's also inspiring other people, which that keeps me going as well too. And also when I get that nice feedback, it's just a nice like validation that I'm kind of on the right track and people are kind of resonating with the stories that I'm sharing. So that definitely keeps me going.
Understood. So understood. Sarah.
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of things. Like I really agree with both Shama and Glo Dean's point, just about the people and about the youth. But for me, especially as an artist, it's other Black female artists or Black women identifying artists working in my community. Like when I see work that's being created that is, I don't want to say, how do I word this? When I see work that's being created that really embodies the experience of what it is to be Black, whether that's internalized racism or whether that's the experience of shadeism or colorism within the Black community, anything like that, it kind of just lets me know that I'm being seen or somebody is working to tell my story. And now like, I'm the assistant artistic director at MT Space, and I kind of want to have I'm in a company at least that works so well like that already, that is trying to get the stories of marginalized people that we're not hearing or that are being lost. And I think for me, just that's really where my spark comes from, is seeing someone writing that story or seeing another female artist who's Black being on, whether that's a commercial, whether that's in another show, and just like seeing their trajectories and being like, yeah, that could be my trajectory too. And even if it's not, like, I'm rooting for all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
100%. That's the power of representation, right? Just as long as we can see ourselves in a position where we don't actually feel like, you know, we haven't seen before. Maybe we're like, oh, you know, do I actually fit in that position? To actually see someone who looks like you, and you see them and they're your sister, or, you know, they're your brother, whichever, you know, they look like you, they know the struggles that you've been through. And then you're like, yeah, I can do it too.
Yeah, especially in like unconventional, for lack of a better phrase, mediums, like when I see Black opera singers, or when I see Black video editors or Black stage managers, like all of the things that are predominantly just not permeated with Black people, the energy, it gives me energy.
Yeah, yeah, in my head, because I'm like, oh, they did that, so I can do it too.
Yes.
She's there.
Black director also. Yes.
I love it. Thank you, Sarah. Natasha, where do you get your spark?
Most recently, just because I feel the spark from other artists doing things that I haven't seen done before. When I watched the 40-year-old version by Rhonda Blank on Netflix, if you have not seen it, go ahead and click after this. But I was like, here's this Black woman with the body yaddy yaddy, and she is a former like 25 or 25, I think, playwright, and now approaching her 40s, and like, I want to be a rapper perhaps. And the whole play of like, the whole movie about whether she wants to kind of compromise her artistic merit to fit into the like white institution. I was like, this is what I face on the day-to-day. And on top of that, it was Black and white. And I'm like, there's so much incredible like artistic choices that were made that stood out. I'm like, this is possible. I'm about to make a film. I'm about to make a film.
Speak it into existence. Yes. Yes. And I'll help you produce it. Thank you. Lovely, lovely stuff. I guess going into that then, you speaking about how the woman in the movie didn't want to kind of succumb to the society that she unfortunately had to be in. When do you feel like you have to choose? Or at what points do you feel like you have to choose between your intersectionality as a Black woman, but not just, you know, yes, we're Black, yes, we're women, but we're also artists and people in the arts. And, you know, society tells us that it's not the most lucrative, not the most important career path to go on. So in my head, okay, I got 3 strikes against me. I'm an artist, I'm Black, and I'm a woman. So in what rooms do you feel like you have to choose? And when you have to choose, which one do you choose? Kind of a 2-pronged question there.
You choose when it's the first of the month, maybe? That's like the only time where I'm like, oh, you know, oh gosh, it's the 27th, and you know, I'm just about to go and take that job because up until now, my prayers have not been answered. But I also think it is an act of faith, because I feel like the harder I have gone in my art form, the more successful and insane, I'll call them, miracles have happened, where I'm like, how? Why did I wait so long? But when I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out, that's exactly what it is. And I'm working 2 jobs or 3 or 4 or 5.
Jeez, yeah, it all depends on when those bills come in, you know? Yeah, I totally get it. You take that mask off, put that mask off. Yes, I will do this. Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, I think like I always choose being an artist because like I'm Black and a woman 24/7. So if you're going to hire me, like that's not changing. And if you thought it was, or you didn't realize it up until this point, you might need to see a therapist. You might need to have a conversation with someone. I don't know, but that's not my problem. So this is what you're hiring. And if you're hiring, I think for your artistry, you're gonna just have to deal. If I can even say you'll have to deal with it. No, you should welcome it. But yeah, I think like also for me, especially singing specifically, I'm a singer who like sounds like quote unquote a Black woman, like in that idea of voice. And I have other versions of myself, of course, but sometimes automatically it's like I'm not going to run from that. So if I'm going to do what I know to do well, and what I do well at, and what I do well at, and what I feel is properly exemplifying myself as an artist and as a character, because like automatically this is not coming off. It's not a tan, like, you know.
I feel you. I love that perspective on it, that these are things that are just not going to change, and I don't want to change them for you, you know? So I'm going to be who I am, and either you accept it or you don't, you know? But, you know, unfortunately, folks just haven't been accepting those things. And so what do we do then? You know, that they don't accept the fact that it's not going to change. My hair is going to look like this, my skin is going to be this. I'm going to continue talking the way that I want to talk. What are you going to do about it? You know, but we find that some people just don't want to accept that yet. I'm finding in this region. Glodeane, what about you, being in the region for so long?
Yeah, well, building off what you just said, I don't know if it's age. Like the older I get, like the less time I have for foolishness. So yeah, I'm just gonna kind of bring all of it. That's just how it is, right? So yeah, I have like really low tolerance. Like each year, like tolerance for crap just gets lower. So I'm gonna try and bring all of myself to everything. And it's possible, I know it's possible that I've lost out on opportunities because of that. This region is still very white, very conservative. And some things people aren't ready to hear certain things yet. So but, you know, I've kind of made peace with that. That's just, you know, some people's attitudes are changing slowly in this region, but still very slowly. And yeah, just for me to be happy and to be like, you know, proud of what I'm doing, I don't really want to compromise on any of the things that I am. And yeah, I can't change any of this. It is just how it is. So yeah.
Understood. Shama.
I guess for me, it's been interesting. It's still something that I'm sort of trying to reconcile with for sure. But I think that, for instance, like in regards to my poetry, when I started performing, it was to a white dominated audience. And you know, the minute they see you and they like you, all of a sudden, like people are reaching out to you saying, hey, can you perform for this? Can you perform for this? And ultimately, when I started poetry, it was sort of like me, it's a very vulnerable process, but a very sacred process in terms of how I explore my emotions. And it was never in the hopes of performing to an audience ever. It sort of just happened. And so I guess when I got to a point where, like, you know, people would reach out saying, hey, could you sort of, I guess, like telling me exactly what I need to write about, like sort of policing the process, and then telling me to send my work to them. And then if they didn't like something, they would like let me know, and I would have to adjust as needed. And that to me at least, not only uncomfortable, but very, maybe this is like a severe word, but like very violent, because it, like, art in any form is very much a vulnerable process for a lot of us. That's sort of how we show up. It's a very authentic process. And ultimately I had to pull back and recognize that I'm my most comfortable when I'm around my own people, my own Black woman, my own, Black community. And sometimes it's okay to conserve my energy in spaces that don't look like me if needed, because that's what makes me comfortable. And I think like a lot of it also has to do with my identity, right? Like I'm a Black woman, but I'm also a Black Muslim woman, and I'm a visibly Black Muslim woman at that. And so it's been a rocky road, and I'm still trying to figure it out, but definitely showing up more authentically requires me to also recognize what it means to also put my energy in places that sort of reciprocate that energy towards me in ways that I need it.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Going where you're celebrating, going to where you're celebrated. That's what my partner always says. He just says, if you have a decision to make, just go where you know you're gonna be loved, you know, and that's kind of what it is at the end of the day. But it's just finding those places, especially here in the region of Waterloo, like, where am I loved? Where is that? And that's kind of why I'm here doing the work that I'm doing. But kind of going off of what you said there, Shama, about sounding like you were commissioned to do some work, but unfortunately the people who are overseeing that work are folks who don't really understand the work that you do. They don't understand what you're writing about, the topics that you're writing about, and so they police that work. And you had a great word. It's very violent, because you're kind of like slashing my tradition. You're slashing my my religion, my experiences, because it doesn't suit what you need your audience to hear. And we find that a lot, in the theater world. There are so many. I was having this conversation with Lisa earlier, but there are so many Black artists trying to do work. They're commissioned for this work, and then they have dramaturges or people looking at the work who are not Black, who don't understand what it is that they're writing about. So how do you navigate that? How do you navigate not having people who commission you for the work and you do the work, but they still are policing it in these ways, because they don't truly understand. I want to go to Natasha for that one first.
Well, as I was mentioning, like the panel on with Toronto Arts Foundation, like with my experience, I've predominantly have worked in and with the Black community in the GTA. And it was kind of like coming out of Etobicoke School of the Arts, which was primarily white, and everything that I enjoyed in that school, it was like I created on the side. I didn't know I was the type to skip class, but I was like, there is nothing here for me. So afterwards, when I found out about Be Current, that was founded and run by Audrey Zena Mandela. I was like, sign me up. I learned how to be a stalker of like Black-led organizations, companies, like anything that was far from like the draining process of what I just come from, or the draining training. But everything kind of spiraled, and I found out about like the Afro-Canadian Playwrights Festival, which was the last one that happened to happen. And I think it was 2008. And again, I feel like everybody that was in Black theater was in the building. So I was soaking it all up, which also led me to Debbie Young, who was doing her like second iteration of her theater company, which led me to Obsidian Theater, which was run by Philip Aiken. So when I started Peace of Mind, I'm like, I am going to continue this legacy with everything that's been planted in me on the free ski with love and mentorship. So hopefully there's not a young person that has to find out about this at a later age, or can kind of take the torch up quicker or further. So I didn't really have an affinity or desire to enter into institutions I feel not welcomed in. And I think that's also a very awkward dance when it does happen on occasion. For whatever reason, it just always seems to be like a partnership and not something that I'm fitting into or like molding myself. So, but on the topic of internalized racism, that's where I hear some of the crazy stories where it's like, you know, I think we should have a white board member just to give us like a good look. And I've like, I'm sorry, pardon me. Or, you know, like, let's go with this partnership, even though it's crazy problematic because, you know, it will get us the funds. Or I think there's a lot of compromising things that I will see and want to address. So I'm like, I'm speaking to us and not speaking to colonialist oppressors because that's what they do. But I think it hurts more when it's coming from your community, and you can understand why, but that's something like I like to really pick at.
I feel that. I feel that. Thank you. Sarah, has there ever been a time where, you know, you were doing work and you felt that it was being policed by, you know, by folks who just don't understand?
Yes. Like I feel very fortunate in that like I'm relatively young in my theater career. And so in a lot of ways, like I wasn't entirely, like Natasha was saying, like there was a certain amount of internalized racism where I just like wasn't seeing, I either I wasn't seeing the issues or I was like actively trying to ignore them. In the beginnings of my career, because it's like you get hired somewhere and you're like, oh my gosh, like I have to cling to this job because if I don't, then I'll have no jobs and then I'll never work. So there are definitely moments where I've like played a character that I'm like, this is like heavy tokenization and I'm not a fan in retrospect. Or like I had an audition once for a really big opportunity, which was great, but then the opposite thing happened where like I'm still being policed, but I'm now being policed in a way to be more Black. And the casting director, I had like chosen to do an accent for this role that I was auditioning for because the show is African or based in Africa, I thought. And then so I'm doing this accent and he was like, whoa. Are you doing an accent? And I was like, well, this is like based in Kenya. So I thought maybe, and he was like, oh no, like this character, she's from the hood and the neck was craning and the, hey girl, you know, she's this. And I was like, are you serious?
Sometimes I'm like, oh, so you want to play the role? Do you want to play the role? Sell it.
He really like this white man, and like I didn't even know what to say because I'd never been in that position, and I was like, and then this is the moment where you're like, do you choose between being authentic or like just doing the work, like doing the work to get things so you can get whatever version of success you think you need to be at? And I was like, oh, gross. I do not want to be in this room anymore. Because he was like, yeah, you gotta, hey, girl, blah, 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 zap, zip, zap, zoo, ah. And I was like, yeah, I guess I can do that. And then even worse, the only other people in the room were also white. And I was like, no one's seeing that this might be problematic right now. And like, it's like, when you do get those opportunities to be in the room where everyone's on the level, and I don't even know if that means they all need to be Black, but everybody recognizes what their responsibility is to this work as it pertains to Black people or Black sensibility or whatever. And having been in those rooms before and then going to this audition, I was like, trauma is happening. Like, and it's so frustrating because you can't even make the excuse, well, I'm trying to give you a better opportunity to get this role, and this is what you need to do to get there. Change the role, change it, like change it, or change the people who are directing it. Because in no world, if the show is based in Africa, and honestly, like, I wish I could tell you the name, but I'm like, just to whatever. But if the show is based in that, why are you out here telling me, oh yes, she needs, I was like, sir,
Yes, education.
enough. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I think that's really where that like frustrating moment comes in, where you're also like in a violent situation, because now you're like, I can't leave. Like, if I leave, then I'm going to look like the angry Black woman who left because she didn't want to take direction, not because this is problematic and I shouldn't be doing it and you shouldn't want me to do that, you know?
Thank you. Yes, you said it.
Yes.
Glodeane, has there ever been a time, or do you find a difference between the way people engage with, on your blog, with when you're writing posts about, Black art, or when you're writing posts about other art? Do you find a difference in engagement with that?
I've been pretty fortunate to not have any negative experience when I've, written about or interviewed Black artists. I have a pretty supportive community that way. So, so no, like, fingers crossed that keeps happening. That so not really. I haven't seen any negative things there. I'm grateful for that. Having spoken to a lot of Black artists, over the years, not everything makes it into the interview, and you do hear the stories of, the challenges that they faced, in order to make their art, or the policing that they've had, to kind of, from different institutions to make art a certain way, or kind of to Sarah's point, what people think Blackness should be like or performed like, or the stereotypes of Blackness. And then I have to wonder if these people actually even know any Black people. So yeah, so not from the point of view of my blog, I haven't had any issues there, but from talking to Black artists behind the scenes, they've definitely shared experiences about the work being policed, or people, wanting them to do things a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to the gaps. So the way I see it, it's other folks wouldn't see it as a privilege, but sometimes I do see it as a privilege that I'm able to see the gaps in how we are supported as artists. Obviously, because the systems that we're here with, they weren't created with us in mind. So of course we're seeing the gaps because we're living in the gaps. We are the gaps, right? But using that privilege that we're able to see the gaps, what gaps do you see in these supports? So in the region of Waterloo, in Toronto, in other regions where we're not well represented, what gaps do we see?
Oh, I often see a lot of the same people being offered the same like opportunities repeatedly, and you're like, oh, it's that person again. Okay. So that is definitely something I see. I don't think that's specific to here. I think that's kind of possibly global, but I definitely see it here. Just having been here for so long, you see the same people coming up again and again, and so definitely that. So I think that needs to be broadened, like definitely inviting different people or more people, not the usual suspects over and over again. So that's one thing for sure. There is quite a bit of gatekeeping when it comes to like, you know, kind of who gets to do what or who gets highlighted or what stories get shared. So that needs to improve for sure too. Yeah, that's just a couple of things. I'll let somebody else speak, but those are the two things that I've noticed specifically.
Yeah. I was gonna just hop off what Glodeane said in terms of when you're seeing the same people, it's also like seeing the same people in the creative leadership positions, like diversify that, especially because we know what is for the region specifically. I know what it looks like. I live here. So your artistic team, your artistic leadership shouldn't look like that. Like there's no excuse that there's not even one person of color, not even one Indigenous person, not even one Black person on. No. Because the time for that was never cool, but now you're behind. And at that point, you're choosing to be behind. Because I'm not trying to listen to any kind of, oh, well, I just can't find them. Go find them then. You can find them. They're here. I know they're here because I'm one of them. So, you know, adjust. Like that's my perspective from like being in community organizations growing up here. Like they're here. I don't know if that means you need to create programs for people who may not be able to afford what you're trying to create, but you're losing talent. You're losing artists, you're losing leadership potential because you're not going to find them based on the excuse that you don't know where they are.
Right, because there are no supports here for us. And so we have to leave, we have to, you know, go further, closer to the city. And we're kind of just leaving the region to fend for itself. But really and truly, that's kind of what you want to do, right? Because you're not helping us, you're not supporting us, you're not giving us any sort of opportunities, and real creative, like opportunities with substance. Like it's just not there, and so we gotta bounce, right? And then, you know, it's an issue. Oh, we're not here, blah blah blah. No, we were here, but you know, y'all just weren't really talking to us, so we had to go, right? Unfortunate, but now I'm seeing a bit of a turn, right? So people from Toronto want to come here. They want to come west. They want to come to Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo. They want to go out to, you know, Oshawa and places like that because it's cheaper, of course. People are just trying to live, like they're just trying to feed their family and do whatever they got to do, right? But are those systems, are those supports that are in the city, are they going to be there when people choose to leave, or when we know that a migration is going to come? So we know that people are going to come. We know that the community is going to come here. So what can we do as a region to make sure that they're supported in the ways that they need to be supported? Sorry, I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but Shama, you have something to say?
Yeah. It was going off both of your points. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but especially in Black History Month, it seemed like it was the same people that were talking at every event. Like I was born in Kitchener-Waterloo, right? So it's although it's a big city, everybody knows everybody, especially in certain spaces. And what ends up happening when you see those same people at like every other event, capacity becomes an issue. A lot of them are at capacity and they get tired. And so like, for instance, something that I did, especially when, you know, I was still in the poetry scene, in the art scene, was when I had organizations or whomever reaching out, I would be like, you know what, I'm going to pass up this offer, but I'm going to suggest this person who people don't know, or like they're trying to get into poetry or some other thing. And instead of being a gatekeeper, being a gate opener. I think that's so important to do, especially in a region like ours. obviously with COVID, it sucks because it would be great if, like, you know, all of us meet in one physical space. But that's something that I did want to mention. Another thing is definitely a lack of physical space specifically for artists. And when I say artists, I mean like Black or BIPOC artists. There are things like, for instance, like there's a live theater here at Center and Square. There are community centers that are open and that sort of thing. But like oftentimes when I go out to these spaces, they're very white dominated. And even the people running these, you know, spaces are white dominated, or they're inaccessible for whatever reason, whether it's, you know, prices or that sort of thing. And so, like, there's definitely a need for some sort of space that is specifically for the arts, and diversify that some way. But I definitely, yeah, like, so those two things I did want to mention. Yeah, essentially mentioning that there is a need in this region for both.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, thank you. And Natasha, any gaps?
Well, I'm really not a fan of the nonprofit monster. Like, when I think of nonprofits, honestly, I might think of a World Vision, you know, like Big Brother, Big Sister, and the arts. Like over probably 95% of it is a nonprofit model. And for those that are kind of in the loop of receiving funding, I think it kind of dries out the art a lot, because it's like a can't lose model in a sense, because you're not dependent on revenue. And when you're not in the loop, or the grant didn't go through, for example, everything is based on revenue, but you're still like having prices at, you know, accessible pricing, $20 or $10 or free, etc. And I think it kind of puts us as at a disadvantage, because from a granting standpoint, I know, like, Claudine, you would know this, that they look heavily at like not just what you get from the government, but they're also looking at what you get from sponsors, foundations, and individual donors. And that line tends to be small. And I'm talking about like like Black Lives Matter crazy donations just coming out the woo-ha, but that'll dry up soon. And yeah, it kind of makes it seem like it's an even playing field, but when you're not bringing in money, like diversifying where your money is coming from, and you don't have connections to like the CFOs, CEOs on your board, you can't, yeah, you're not going to have that same large budget if you're fortunate to have that operating budget. And essentially you will not be able to afford that venue, which we do not have, that Black-owned venue. Maybe hope, like, fingers crossed, Nia crosses the finish line, but that's it. And so we're left to like rent out without the connection, be treated in a certain way, like working off of scraps. And that's where the tiredness, the overburden, and let me just get that job at TD, front desk, that's consistent, because I can't sustain this long term. So, I mean, long term, I am looking at something feasible as a for-profit model that doesn't compromise the art, and actually more so values it. With the pandemic, like, there's a lot of free programming, and I'm wondering like how that will pan out over the next few years, of like what is the public expecting, because they already think that this is a hobby. But I really want to work more towards like legitimizing the art and You know, you pay for the Jordans and you pay for the ticket.
Yeah. How do you, oh my God. Yeah. Understood. I was just having this conversation too, you know, of that sustainability, because art, and we see it now, especially Black art, especially, but especially in this time, we see how important art is, how important creative expression is. And so I still don't understand why folks and organizations and, you know, people like that just don't see the value in it. And it's, you know, it's very tough sometimes to have to continue to fight and to continue to over explain why you're doing something, why you need to tell this story. And then, you know, once again, you just feel like you're, one, you're being policed, and two, you have to take out a part of yourself, or you have to, you know, you have to kind of turn off a part of who you are to get that grant, or to have this funder see you or see your project as a viable project. Oh, yes, this person can do it. Great, we trust you with $5,000. Go ahead and do your thing. Like, how do we, how Sway? Like, how are we supposed to continue and feed our families? You know, feed ourselves. It's very tough. I want to talk about that migration again. So people coming into the city, people coming into the city, but also just moving outside of Toronto because they need a more sustainable life. It's you know, Toronto is a lovely, amazing place, and it's a place where I feel like everyone can find a place for themselves, an environment where they truly feel like they are understood, except for, you know, how much rent is, you know, no one really understands what that's all about. And so they have to move out of the city. And we know that migration is coming. We know that our people are coming here. So what systems do we have to put in place to make sure that they're supported? What systems do you think that they would need in order to actually feel like here is a place where they truly belong?
That's a big question. And first of all, like, Waterloo region is also getting to be very expensive to live now. It's going that way. So I think that's also going to force a lot of people out of the region to somewhere else. So that's the first thing. So it starts at the top. Like, you know, we need to have like affordable housing strategy. So people who want to be able to come here and create things can actually afford to live here. We need political will. If you look at our regional council, it's all old white people, right? So it has to start up here, and then the people up here are making decisions that actually reflect the community. Then I think that, you know, will slowly start to change things, because yeah, like, people who are in control right now do not really fully reflect the people that live in this region. So I think that's where it needs to start. One of many things. So that's one of my main suggestions.
Shama, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. Well, I guess for one, like, naming what's happening, a lot of so like the fact that there are, like, the city and the regions putting money towards transit and condos, insane amount of condos in downtown Kitchener, putting money towards University of Waterloo, other universities in the city. I went to University of Waterloo, by the way. But like, putting money towards things like that instead of actually listening to what citizens need. Because I think by not calling it what it is, like structural racism, structural violence against people that have lived here for years, 20, 30, 40 years, it's going to, like, I guess, like, it's really sad to see, because our communities are ones that created communities when migrating here, right? Like, especially when you're leaving, you know, war zoned area, like countries and places that had, you know, civil wars and that sort of thing. And you're coming here where there's not much community or people that look like us unless you go to certain types of neighborhood. And then them creating these communities and resources and accesses and organizations that are very much grassroots, but might not necessarily have like the formal structure to them, but it's still supporting so many of our people, but having like, you know, like the skyrocketing condos, apartments, food going up, like all these different things. It's like you're literally breaking down a community that made the city. And so definitely calling it for what it is. I think that, you know, people are recognizing that there's a need, people at the top, but essentially what does it look like to pass on the torch, but also what does it look like to do it in a way, like to be an ally essentially is to also consider sacrificing your roles, your positions, to reflect on what it means to have an ego in this space, and compromise things that, you know, you've had privilege over for so long. And I think a lot of people for a long time weren't ready for that. And I don't know if they're ready for that as of right now, but yeah, I guess that those are my thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Natasha, do you have anything to add?
Well, I am in like Weston and Lawrence area right now, in Toronto. But I mean, what I've always kind of envisioned is there's a space here, Distillery District, that is like a you might hear my baby in the background. This like renovated factory, ton up kind of magical wonderland with the cobblestone and everything. That developers grabbed and have made a wonderful sum of money. But that's really something that I would love to see, just on a macro level, because you're not gonna like save everyone in one day. But I think just starting with like a block or a home, a space, can really bloom and boom. But yeah, we've just been so conditioned to not trust each other, kind of like police each other. It's just a mindset to get over because it will ultimately take money and resources. But I think that's a great opportunity for people that are moving outside of Toronto to really prioritize community building, like to have what's, for example, like in Brampton, it's South Asian community, but the second community is the Black community, but they're on two different levels financially as groups. And I think it's just because we're not like working together, but clearly the South Asian community is working together and, you know, like sponsoring hospitals and having all the like retail and businesses for the most part. So with what's happening in this present moment with Black Lives Matter, etc., I hope it's just really being about that life, to build something and not just asking for it, because you might wait 100 more years to get a quarter of what you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you could double up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's all about coming together. And I think it's exactly what you said there, Natasha. It takes money, it takes resources. And we can't continue to sit here and, you know, ask other people who, yeah, they have those things. And yeah, they can do those things for us if they wanted to, but we can't wait for that all to happen. And these systems that we know need to be broken down from like the tippy top. Who's going to be doing all that work? Because it seems like it's not them. So we're going to have to do all that work. So do I take my time and my energy to break down the system, or do I just put my money into it. Because at the end of the day, it's either your time, energy, or the funds. So which one are we going to choose? Thank you, Natasha. Lovely. Sarah, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think like, yeah, there's a lot of things. I feel a lot of things about this part. Like, I think I love the idea of the migration. I love and I appreciate the people who are migrating here. There is a hindrance to that, in that what Glodeane was talking about is that now KW is quite expensive to live in. Like, most young artists who do live here aren't living on their own. And we aren't, like Shama said, set up with some kind of artist space, which is something I've always wanted to create. But it's a matter of like, the real estate market here is wild. To rent a building in downtown Kitchener, I don't have $80,000 to do that. Like, I just don't. And then you get to the conversation of funds and resources like Natasha's talking about, and those funds and those resources need to come from the region. Like, the money is there and or is anywhere. Like, if anyone wants to tell me where the money is or where to find the money, it has to come from that government level of things here. Because there was a time, I think, when KW, like, I guess you could say like City of Waterloo, but when they were really trying to foster community and really trying to get people out and connect people with things like open streets and all of the festivals they would hold in the summer. And that was like a wonderful time, I think, to be here if you were a young artist, because you could send them an email and you could perform at those things and you could maybe get a little bit more visibility, though there would be like a lot of the same people. But now with transit, all of those things are kind of like thrown into the garbage, because you can't run an open festival, at least in Kitchener, can't really run an open festival in a street where there's a streetcar. You can't divert it. Like, we're not a city that was made really to handle migration or to handle large amounts of it in a short time. Like, there's no track set up for this wonderful streetcar that I'm sure many people use and makes their lives better, but there's nowhere for that to go right now, except for down King Street. So then that entire space, except for the square itself, is kind of moot. You can't have a block party down there anymore. You can't do a lot of those things. And I think with that migration obviously happening, like me saying this is not stopping it, but with that migration happening, I think the supports just need to be put in place. I don't know whether that's from other theater companies in the city, or if that's community theater, or if that's other arts organizations or whatever, doing their best, because there are certain organizations that I'm like, oh, I knew exactly what that was the whole time when I was here, and I knew it existed when I left and came back still, because I was connected with it before. But there's lots of organizations that I'm like, oh, I saw you all those years ago and you're the exact same. So, and I don't know if that's a matter of just like the funding isn't coming through for them, or they're not trying to grow. And that kind of happens in our own community, which is unfortunate to say, but it's like, what are we doing to connect these people? If you're not in it already, how do you learn about it? Because just the other day, I learned about like this small youth organization that's connected to a Black organization in Kitchener. And I was like, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like, until I was looking around Instagram one day, and like social media is a great tool for that, but it's also just like, how do you engage those people? How do you make services available for them that are sustainable for you and for the furthering of those young people they're going to bring with them when they migrate here? Because those young artists are the ones who are going to come here, see that there's nothing, and then they're going to leave. Their parents may not be able to, because their parents are like, I'm settled here. People know me, but no one knows them. So if they're not using social media, if they're not doing that stuff, they're going to be like me, and they're going to say, cool, no one looks like me. I don't see my work, bye-bye. And they're going to go. And they might come back, they might not. And then Toronto has this opportunity-ish, I say this without living there, where there are organizations there that are run by Black people, or at least have like semi-representation. And it's frustrating sometimes that there's only like you, at least for an arts organization. And there's, you know, Kafka, like that's kind of it. Like it's you and Glodeane, and you know, that's great, but it's like, you need more of us. There need to be more Black artistic leaders in the city. And honestly, there may be, and I might be like so off base and I'm missing people, and that's totally fine. And like, please someone tell me. But the fact is that I've lived here. I lived here my whole life. I only left for 2 years. Only 2 years. So it's not like I left for like a decade and then came back. I only left for a hot minute. And in between the time I was there, I was here and I wasn't saying anything. So how, except for like the 1 and 2 that I already knew. So I don't know if that really is like, that's how we need to change that. It's just a problem that I notice that I want to change, but I also like need the people to help me change that. So I don't know if it's like, I'm going to send a newsletter to every Black person on the face of the planet. Be like, hey, you should come help me with this thing.
Well, the thing is, it's not just the people, right? Because we know that the people are here. We are the second largest visible minority in this region. But are the people, do people want to do anything about it? We see the gaps, it's obvious, you know, they're right there, we're living in them, but are we gonna do something about it? And if so, what are we gonna do? If so, who are we going to connect with? If so, what are we willing to sacrifice? And I don't know if we're ready to, you know, to answer those questions just yet. Shama, Glodeane, do you have anything to add?
Ooh. Yeah, just building off your point, there's it kind of makes me tired to think about like all the work that has to be done, right? Like I'm tired in advance. Right? So,
We're getting dried, like I'm tired.
Long road, and I don't know like when or how long it will take for us to see progress, but I think there is some incremental progress being made, but yeah, it's a big question, and it's going to take, I think, a while for everything to kind of come to fruition, and it's going to take a lot of energy, and burnout is real, right? So there's real reasons why people, you know, kind of leave causes behind, not because they don't love them anymore. It's just sometimes you feel defeated. You're like, I've been doing this here for like a long time. I've, you know, doing all this behind the scenes work, and, you know, you see other people doing behind the scenes work, and then just like, is anything even happening, right? So yeah, I remain hopeful, cautiously optimistic, but yeah, I think we still have a long way to go.
Understood. Yeah. Shama.
I guess like what I always tell people, especially when I work in community, is to not recreate the wheel if you don't have to. I think that with Kitchener-Waterloo, it's great because it's small, and people know people. It's not like Toronto in that it's really big. You know, there's people that, you know, that can live in like, I don't know, like Scarborough, and others living in Mississauga. I don't know if you consider Mississauga part of GTA. I do, but like just, yeah, but just like the fact that we're a small region, I always like, there's this need to leverage each other's services and resources, like even just being on this panel and being exposed to other Black women that are either working in this region, other regions. Like for me, at least, I know that a lot of Black Muslim girls are not really exposed to theater and acting and directing and filming in that sort of space. And so what does it mean for us to collaborate, to work together and leverage each other's resources? Because yeah, capacity's a real issue. Burnout is a real issue, especially this past year. So how could we sort of lean into other organizations that are already doing the work, and not only doing the work, but are experts in that space? Like I don't need to be doing something or leading something or facilitating something if I know, for instance, Sarah, who's already doing this work and doing it in an amazing way. How could I work with her to see where we could like sort of build this and make it bigger than what it would originally be? Also, like, and this may be a random thing to say, but one thing that I'm noticing, especially with Black youth, specifically with Black boys, a lot of them are, you know, exploring and getting into the space of like, you know, rapping and you know, creating music videos and films and that sort of thing. And I'm recognizing how you know, a lot of them live here, but they're going out to the GTA region to access studios, for instance, or access spaces to hold concerts and things like that. And I thought to myself, I'm like, oh my God, there's so many of them here. Are there studio spaces here in the city, right? Like there are spaces like the Hefner Studio that was just created in Kitchener Public Library, but a lot of them don't know about that. And a lot of institutions like the Kitchener Library consider them hard to reach, right? And there's importance of like, I hate that word so much because it puts the onus on marginalized folks and marginalized communities rather than the institutions that that are using this term, because essentially we're being underserved, not necessarily hard to reach. So yeah, it's a bunch of different things that I said, but essentially that like there's more to do in the city, but what does it look like when we can lean into each other and use each other's services and leverage each other's sort of expertise to build capacity?
Right. With what you said about the hard to reach, it's hard that we're hard to reach because they're not speaking our language. For all these years, we've had to speak their language. And so, you know, we can take their jobs and do these different things because I'm versed in the way you speak and how to communicate with you, but they have never tried, you know, it's never been the other way around, you know? So, you know, it's not that we're hard to reach, we're right here, but you just don't know how to talk to me. And it's not that you don't know, it's that you're not trying, you're not asking questions, you know, that whole thing. And I love, you know, that you talk about passing the torch, you know what I mean? Like passing the torch, but just like giving the opportunity to someone else. It's the ego. We have, like, the ego just has to be shot, killed, buried 6 feet under, go do something else. You know what I mean? If there's someone out there who can do the job better than you, give it to that person. That is how we build the economy. That is how we build the ecology. We can't just take the opportunity because it's the opportunity. Are you best fit for the opportunity? If you know someone who is, please give that to them. Your opportunity will come, it will, you know, but give because we're here and we're hungry, we're looking for things, you know. Yeah, I totally agree 100%. Ooh, it's 7:18, so we're coming down to the wire here. I do want to open it up for like one or two questions, a few questions if there are any, but just closing off, I want to know, because I was asked this question, but I'm not going to say the whole question, but Black. So Black, when you hear that word, what comes up? What comes up in you? Black. I'll let that marinate.
Yeah. Stay with that for a second.
In some ways, it's the same thought of what comes up with white, because I think the color strips people of, not strips, but takes away from, I think, your culture and identity. And I kind of envy when people can say, you know, I'm Chinese or I'm Indian, or even to say like I'm Canadian apart from a color, when that color comes first. And I know in the description you had mentioned like African, Caribbean, Black, and how you identify. And I think that's more useful because I know that there's many people that are just like, it's Black for me. and others just prefer the African or the Canadian or the you know, like African Nova Scotian, for example. But I feel like it feels a bit more like boxed in, right now and how I hear people using it, sometimes I'm like, this is also feeling in a way like the N-word, but like a subtleness to it, like how I hear the word, the term or use of Black mentioned. I'm like, I don't like that. It's just sounding like and like colored or Negro. I just feel like there can be times where it is just a new iteration that is assigned, that is taken ownership of. But I prefer, in my heart of hearts, African, but I use Black all the time. That's the conversation happening in my head.
Yeah, that's why I asked. It's honestly, it's a conversation that I have with myself all the time. Like, which one is it? You know, which one is it? Glodeane, yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point, because, you know, like we always say, Black people are not a monolith. We have shared experiences that, you know, if I could share a story, and I'm sure we've all had some sort of similar experience with it, but we all have different experiences overall. So I understand what she was saying there. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a big question, and I don't really know if there's like a way to like break it down into like a succinct, like this is what it means, because it means like so many things, right?
Mm-hmm. Sarah?
Yeah, Natasha made a really good point. I was like, oh, dip. That's fair. That's a fair point. Yeah, and like Black people are not a monolith. Every time I think of Black, it's tough because I think Black people say Black comfortably, and people who aren't Black say Black like Black. Like there's this like timidity, and you're like, girl, it's Black. Like just get the word out your mouth. Come on, please. Like it really gets me. And that's, I think, where that part comes in, where it's like, now you feel like it's a dirty word and you're making a word, because like my parents are immigrants, they're both Jamaican, and they moved here. And I always say like Black Canadian when I like in my artist statement, it says like Sarah is young, Black, capital B and whatever. And so what usually comes up in my mind is that I know everyone's seen Cool Runnings, but that like, I see pride, I see power. That instantly comes up for me, like always, when I think of Black. But I also recognize that other people like to him and ha and say, like people who are not recognizing what the weight of the term is sometimes, who aren't Black, will try to find a way to slither out from saying it,
right,
or will like take it out, or like we'll say people of color, and it gets severe for me when someone calls me a person of color, because then I feel like
Black erasure, that's what that is.
Racist.
Well, fully. I said Black, I didn't say person of color. If I said Black, you say Black. Simple. Let me make it simple for you. Just, if I said it, you say it. And if you don't want to say it, just say Sarah then. Don't say anything else.
Shama?
When I think of Black, I think of resilience in the most worst way, if that makes sense. Like in the sense of like, we have to be resilient in ways that we should have never been resilient. And we have to be revolutionary in the way that we should have never, like there's things that we just have to go through as people in ways that, you know, other people all the time would tell us, like, I never could imagine going through that. And it's our everyday lives. So yeah, I think that's what I typically think of when that term comes up, and everything. And I connect with everything that you all have said as well.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, it's different for everyone because we are different. We are different, but also the same. Anyway, lovely conversation, ladies. I guess, yeah, I just want to open it up to the floor, to anyone. If you have a question, a comment, if you have anything to share and say, now is your chance. Please feel free. You can take yourself off of mute, or you can just write in the chat. So my mother asks, do any of you ladies have any upcoming projects that we should look out for?
Well, I'm working on the biennial exhibition that's scheduled for May 29th to June 27th. So that is kind of an evolving thing. So we're trying to produce the biennial safely within COVID protocols. So we're hoping to do virtual programming and then some in-person like standalone sculptural installations. So that, look out for that. You can keep an eye on our website. That's, you know, everything's kind of changing all the time, just keeping in touch with the city and public health and everyone to make sure we're like doing everything safely. So that's the thing that's kind of taking up all my time right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
We're actually working on a film project where it's going to be really filming the start of our grassroots organization in the region and sort of like what we've experienced as Black Muslim women. And it's really cool because we're going to be working with our friend from the GTA region who's going to sort of do the whole videography, editing, all that. And we're hopefully going to present it to the community. Again, with COVID restrictions and all that we have to consider, but we're praying that in the summer we'll be able to showcase that and make it a huge event. So yeah, so watch out for that.
Lovely. Anyone else?
Yeah, empty space, because that's where I do work. Impact is coming up in September, the end of September. So I know that's a long time, but like, mark your calendar, I don't know. And also the X Page program, which is it's like essentially like a women's writing workshop for immigrant women. So if anyone knows anybody who might be interested in looking at that, you can let me know. But yeah, and then as an actor, I don't know, something, somewhere, someday.
At some point in time.
At some point.
Yes. Natasha, anything from you?
I start at Soul Pepper on Monday. Hooray!
Congratulations.
And I'm just working on finishing a play. So that's it for now.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, we're coming down to time. Just a few more minutes. Oh, the beautiful Anne. Okay. She says, in thinking about the gaps that are in the KW area, what role would you want to see the school boards play in supporting and creating any environment where artists who are part of the African, Caribbean, and Black diaspora thrive? I think, Shama, I feel like you have something to say about this one. Go ahead, girl.
Yeah, I love that question. It's gonna be funny that I suggest this, but you know those like competition between like rappers and like or like creating like those events where like different sort of like singers, rappers, and whatever go on stage, and it becomes like a place where like, you know, people, specifically Black communities, come and sort of enjoy and vibe out. I think there's definitely a need for that. Like, I think that when we think of trying to create safe spaces and addressing discrimination and racism and all that, we think of it in very structural ways that are like programs and workshops and that sort of thing. But just like having the space to vibe out and feel the sort of different ways that different Black youth express themselves is so needed, because again, a lot of the youth go to Toronto to experience that. So there's definitely a need for that, and I would love to, like, you know, maybe even work with you to see how that is possible, because I'm definitely connected to a lot of Black youth in the region. But yeah, I guess that's something.
Yes. Anne says, yeah, thanks for making my question make sense. Yeah, lovely stuff. I just want to thank you ladies again for being here with me this evening, for having this conversation, for speaking so openly about your experiences and your ideas, and, you know, what you see that we can all do to help, you know, to help support our artists in this region, and to keep the love alive here, you know, because it is a beautiful place. It really is. But we just have to make it a place where everyone is welcome. where we are all welcome. Okay, thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if you guys want to put like your Instagram and stuff in the chat, please feel free, and everyone, please follow these lovely ladies. They're doing some amazing work in the community. So please do that. And as everyone trickles out, I'm going to bring Shama back to the stage. You may please perform your last piece. Go ahead.
Amazing. Okay. So this piece is called Remind Them. It's a piece that I wrote about, I want to say 2 years ago. It's something that deeply resonates with me and something I look back and read when I sort of need a reminder of who I am. So again, without further ado. The color that will forever reside in my blood and will keep me on holy ground is the same color that lived war inside of her war. Is the goodbye kisses that seem tangible 3 years later when there's nothing left to go back to home. Is the same place that birthed her and took all that she's ever known simultaneously now. When they ask me, why does migration sound like home? Remind them, my survival has no destination. My residence in my motherland still has an obituary notice someone forgot to take down. Maybe because my people are still grieving. I am still grieving. I have yet to know an accommodation that looks like mine, because they are more comfortable in my silence than the story of the tear stains on my hijab. Hijab has protected me more than this country ever have. Maybe that's why I never forget to leave the house without one. So remind them, when they ask me, why does migration sound like home? Tell them, my love language has always been in Saho, in Islam, in Blackness, in places that have been coming and going and straying and leaving everything beautiful because it has been touched by my God. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shama. Yes, I would like to once again thank everyone for being here. And I hope you guys have, you guys are already home, but I hope you guys have a really great evening. And if you are interested and you want to come over to the rooftop patio in the gather space, please, just click that link in the same email. It'll take you straight to the gather and you can have a little bit more conversation with me. I will be there. And if the ladies of the panel also want to join, please join, and I'll send you that link as well. So yes, we will see you all there. Thank you and have a great evening.